Hi there. My name is Mark, and we've been married for about 1.5 years, and my wife's name is Jenna. So in total, we've been a couple for 5 years. We are both employed and have been saving and performing well in our respective IT jobs for quite some time. Not a joint stake, just living in a rented house, saving for the future. Exactly a week and a half ago, I came across something that would break my entire perception of reality. Lately, it has been tight at work, and I must ensure that I get a promotion that I've been struggling for. As a result, I have not been very active around this place, which perhaps afforded Jenna the chance she wanted. And one night, late at night, I overheard her talking with someone on the phone. It was around 9 p.m., and immediately she disconnected the call when I entered the room. That felt odd. Next, I went to check on her at 3 a.m. as I could not sleep, and I noticed that her phone was on. Some records include the call logs from that evening, but they were seen to be missing. I had this uneasy feeling, so I burrowed deeper. It was only for her to tell me that she was using Telegram, an app I never knew she had. We always tended to communicate with WhatsApp for all the stuff. I found explicit messages that made my blood curdle. It was an appropriate way to suggest that she was sending her number to some guy from work. They were exchanging explicit photos and discussing what they were doing sexually. At that point, it was quite easy to see that it was not just an emotional crush. They just wanted to have a good time together. She repeated several times in the chats that she never wanted him to feel that it was anything more than a fling. It was obvious from their meetings and communication that they had kissed and made love 4 times. I took screenshots of everything, but I didn't discuss it with her right away, afraid of what she might do next. I was definitely in shock because I couldn't move. My feelings were frozen. And for a few days, I was like a zombie, with stiff legs and a painful heart. When I realized that Jenna was about to leave, I was quickly able to answer her question, "Is everything okay?" by explaining it was work pressure. I remember telling some colleagues at work that my aunt had died to hide my condition because I knew there was something wrong with me. On the advice of my doctor, I had to stay off work for about 2 weeks. 4 days ago, she was packing her bags to go on a business trip and meet this man at a hotel. She. The next morning, I woke up stressed and heartbroken and threw up. Knowing that I had a fever, I asked her to stay with me no matter what. She told me that the trip was necessary for business, and at that moment, I realized that everything was over for us. I had to stand up for myself and correct her or stop her. I couldn't let her get away with it. I said to my brother, "I'd like you to follow her and try to take pictures of her." The next day, he sent me photos of her feeding him and then kissing him. The day I saw those photos, I cried like a little girl who had lost all her toys. I wanted to end my suffering by getting drunk, but my brother made me give up that desire, and I started planning my revenge. I finally decided to cheat on Jenna and tell her I was seeing someone else before breaking up with her. I knew that she would be jealous and demand that I take a lie detector test, so I was prepared to provide all the evidence of her infidelity in court. Her very conservative parents would be very angry. Even her close relatives would never believe her again, or at least it seemed that way. For example, one day I was discussing this issue with a friend of my dad's, and he explained that he was a lawyer. He told me that it would be an easy divorce with all the evidence I had on hand. We didn't have anything to divide. Property, my mom gave Jenna some jewelry. Instead, I decided to pack all my things and intended to move into a spare room in the house with a friend. I was waiting for her to arrive, having already taken the ring off my finger. Then the moment came. She came in and I said to her that I was in another relationship. She was shocked. I picked up my items and prepared to leave the house. She set herself in my way and showered me with questions, who she was, whether I love her more than my wife. She began to say something and I lost it. It was the first time for me to become aggressive and raise my voice for the last 5 years. I walked out, opened the car door, and drove off. She persisted in calling me at least 10 times before I opted to block the number. Then began a series of text messages. I threatened her to stop, or else I would block her there as well, I said to her. Finally, she relented to meet in a few days to talk about the prospect. But when I met her, she seemed to be a beaten woman. She was hungry and her eyes were red with tears. She began by stating that she recognized that I never cheated on her because it was not in my character. She was right. I explained to her the reasons for my departure was her infidelity, and it was impossible for me to accept her back. She pleaded with me and asked me to forgive her and that it was just a mistake and it did not mean anything to her at all. She even pulled out her phone, and I saw her messages, the messages that had not been deleted. She locked it and told me about the affair to the HR department. She was thinking of laying off and she had informed his wife of this intention with proof. But I refused to believe her. One day I said to her that I wanted a divorce. She started weeping, apologized for her behavior, and asked me to forgive her, but I did not budge. Then there was the sound of a knock at the door. It was his wife. She was cursing Jenna, saying she wished for the marriage of our union to end. She left, and I received her phone number as evidence. I turned to Jenna and asked her what she believed would happen next. We intend to purchase a house this year and start a family. She couldn't answer. I just left her there, standing all alone and depressed. The following day, her father rang me, said sorry, and encouraged me to reconsider my stand. He said that Jenna was indeed remorseful for her actions. Still, the sensation of betrayal persisted within me. Despite this, she kept writing to me and also visited my brother's house thinking I was staying with him. She got up and went away when she saw that I was not around. Now, I'm just lost. She's remorseful and willing to do anything, but should I forgive her? I still love her, but I don't want a toxic marriage. Trust is gone, and I need to figure out what to do next. It was a few days after the confrontation when I was still living in my friend's house, Dave's house, to be precise. He has been incredibly supportive and helpful throughout this entire process, letting me breathe while at the same time not letting me take unnecessary risks. I just tried to stay afloat, but Jenna was not letting me go. She started sending these very lengthy, sentimental messages saying she wanted another chance. She'd write paragraphs about how much she loved me, how sorry she was, how she vowed to do whatever it would take for me to forgive her. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Each message seared like salt into an open sore. Each time I wake up in the morning, I check my phone and see that she texted me all night long. Her messages were from apologizing profusely to yelling at me and demanding where I have been and why she does not feel loved by me. I was fully aware that all of this was in the cheater's guide: deny, shift the blame, twist. Still, it hurt. The same day my lawyer, Mr. Collins, called me. He was a family friend who had been involved in the divorce process for many years. He said Jenna's lawyer called him to attempt to discuss it with him. Jenna did not want a messy divorce, which was frankly funny, given how she had dismantled everything. He told me to stand my ground and leave everything to him, which I did. He was sure that we'd win because I had piled up heaps of evidence against the accused. At the same time, I received texts from friends we knew in common and several members of Jenna's family. Her sister, Emily, called me to tell me Jenna left me because I am heartless. She attempted to appeal to my emotions, telling me that Jenna was in such a terrible state that she needed my companionship now more than ever. I wasn't having it. There were calls from Jenna's parents. They are conservatives, representatives of the old generation who were shocked by the scandal. One evening, her dad, Mr. Thompson, phoned me, and I could hear how he was driven by emotions. He readily pleaded for Jenna and asked me to take back my decision of filing for a divorce. He claimed that Jenna was remorseful and that she should be given another opportunity. I listened, but also made a statement that there was no more trust between us and we could not rebuild it again. Several days later, I was at Dave's place, for some reason aimlessly surfing through Netflix on the internet when the phone rang. It was a pop-up from Facebook that I received the other day. Jenna had shared a video apology on her page, crying her eyes out and explaining that she had made the worst decision of her life and begging for everyone's forgiveness. In particular, she portrayed herself as a helpless woman who was lost and did not know what she wanted, but who loved me most of all. The comments for the episode, therefore, came in differently. Others empathized with her, and some said that she was excusable because all people make mistakes. Some even insulted her for betraying me, and for not being worthy of me. I watched them. I was not going to be drawn into another spectacle, much as their championed cause was igniting my rage. Jenna arrived at Dave's place. She cried until her eyes were red, and she smelled of liquor with wrinkled and disheveled clothing. She continued and pleaded with Dave to open the door so that she could speak to me. Dave, in his best-behaved manner, and after realizing that I was in danger, refused her entry as she pressured him to let her in. She wouldn't. They verbalized, screaming at the top of her voice. Dave called me downstairs, or rather yelled that food was ready, and there, on the porch, I saw her crying her eyes out. "Mark, please," she cried. "Please just talk to me." There was desperation in the voice. "I need to explain to someone." I probably freezing under an icy veneer with no emotion stirring within. "Jenna, there is nothing to discuss here. You were unfaithful and deceptive, and as such, it is best that we no longer remain together." She was sobbing on her knees, so she clutched at my hand. Unfortunately, they found suspicious of me. "I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake, but I love you. Give me one chance." I pulled my hand away. They laughed at me as though I was some stupid kid who didn't understand anything. "As for you, you killed our marriage the moment you decided to succumb to your sinful cravings and sleep with him." I sat down, exhausted as Jenna kept on crying, though to me it seemed like the door we just closed was the door on our entire life together. They turned and walked back upstairs, and I sat with Dave, who gave me a beer. "It's like you read my mind," and then he said, "You did the right thing, man." In the following weeks, some of this activity started to normalize, but the effects were still being felt. Jenna stopped contacting me via text as well as through phone calls, but was constantly attempting to cyberbully me via friends and close relatives. Thus, I attempted to stay focused at work, determined to try and regain normalcy in my life. What recently happened to me is that after months of striving for a promotion, the position became available and I accepted the offer, but it felt like a mix of euphoria and tragedy. I must admit that I'd accomplished something significant. However, the only person that I felt comfortable sharing this with was the person who had let me down. I also contacted Jenna's affair partner's wife, Laura. We arranged to meet at a cafe, and she proceeded to tell me her perspective on the issue. She was angry, not only with her husband but with Jenna as well. Laura proceeded to show me more texts and photos that her husband had attempted to delete. It was painful but also relieving to see the extent to which they betrayed us. Laura and I chose to remain friends and to encourage each other through those divorces. All that she wanted was to take her husband to the cleaners, and I respect her courage. She was the mother of 3, and she was not going to let him go scot-free. Ultimately, Jenna's life is in ruins. Her job, her reputation, her family's respect. She went to live with her parents again, and they were so angry and ashamed of her. For myself, I am only beginning the work of cleaning up the mess. It has not been easy, but I am making some progress. Yeah, one day at a time, right? After the first storm, I found myself facing the legal process, which I now had to overcome. My lawyer was Mr. Collins. The man was a rock. All through the process, he was extremely resourceful. I felt like my rights as a subject of the court were well explained to me and what to expect generally. Jenna was trying to reach out to me through our attorney, but Collins had settled all our matters. He wanted to know the strength of the evidence that I had, and he guaranteed me that the divorce would be a walkover. This may explain why I was feeling a bit of anger, a bit of sadness, and in equal measure relief whenever we went to court one morning for the final hearing of our divorce case. I have not seen Jenna in person since the day she appeared at our mutual friend Dave's house. She was as drained as I have ever seen her, not the woman who used to embrace life and all that it offered. Her eyes were reddened, and she did not look at me directly, which I am okay with anyway, since it is embarrassing to look directly into the eyes of someone up close when one is crying Ring was on an alike frenzy. To his astonishment, Jenna's lawyer attempted to lobby for some kind of resolution B. Even the he for the judge slammed it down due to ample proof of Jenna's cheating. This made it possible for the couple to obtain a divorce in record time, and Jenna was left with whatever she could carry in her hands. My savings were not touched by her, and I had no settlement to pay her in case she decided to request some money from me. When stepping out of the courtroom, I got a feeling of freedom and understanding happening to me. I felt that the weight of the marriage and its betrayal left my shoulders as I started the process of moving forward into my new life. Dave was outside waiting for me, and we went out to have a celebratory meal and/or drink, since now I was a free woman. Well, at least to some extent. But the celebration was not very cheerful. After that, life became a bust as up and down as an elevator following a divorce. I tried to get myself a new place to live, so I left Dave's house and got an apartment flat. Being on my own felt irrelevant, but at the same time it had this sort of sense of appropriateness. This led me to self-reflect and dedicate my time to improving my physical appearance by going to the gym, eating properly, and meeting my old friends. This can be a scenario to some extent like getting to know who the person is outside of marriage. Jenna attempted to reach out to me several times. There are emails I received from her, and an attempt she made to see me at my new residence. If it were within her to be more pitiful, she lowered herself to pleading for another chance and forgiveness. But I stood firm. I couldn't return to the environment that negatively affected me before. Each time she talked to her, it was as if having a bandage torn off a wound that was in the process of recovery. Work became my refuge. The promotion that I looked forward to before and yearned to achieve was another one that came with other challenges and responsibilities, but it was a good thing because it was an extra thing that made me divert my mind from my pains. I dedicated myself to work, staying up late to juggle all the tasks and being an active part of friendly and collaborative multitasking team-building events. My friends saw the change in me, and although most of them did not recognize the details of the story, they thought I was highly motivated. And of course, there was Laura, the wife of Jenna's husband. We continued to be friends and saw each other from time to see how we were doing. She went into the divorce like a hungry lion, and I admired her courage. She got custody of the children, and her ex-husband had to pay a lot of child support. Watching her regain the power of life motivated me to do the same. One evening, we had a drink with Laura. It was just a friendly conversation that turned serious after a few glasses of wine. We talked about our fears, dreams, and what it was like to be betrayed. I stopped for a second and she grabbed my hand with both hands and put it on the table. "It was hard, but now we are rising from the ashes," she said. That night was a turning point. We started spending more time together, not as two people suffering from some kind of misfortune, but as friends. I realized that we had more than just a traumatic connection. We started meeting more often, and soon it felt like a real date. It was not rushed, it was natural, a healing process for both of us. At the same time, Jenna's life was not going well, to put it mildly. I learned from friends that she had been fired from her job, that her parents were pulling away from her, and that she was trying to start her life over. I admit that part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't because she deserved what was happening to her. In recent months, I have been happier than I have been in years. I got a cat, which Jenna had forbidden me to have before. My new place gradually turned into a home with things I loved: books, plants, paintings, and other things that reflected my new life. My feelings for Laura grew stronger, and we became even closer. We took our time, knowing that we both needed time to fully recover. But over time, I realized that we were more than friends. One evening, we were walking in the park and she suddenly turned to me. "I never thought I could trust anyone again, but with you, I know I can trust you." From then on, I realized that I felt the same way. The future seemed less threatening and more promising. It took me some time to realize that we were not victims of someone else's betrayal, but of the choices we made afterward. To anyone out there going through something similar, know this: it gets better. It's a hard, painful journey, but you come out stronger. Surround yourself with good people, focus on your growth, and take things one day at a time. When I decided to divorce her and end things between me and Jenna, I had to start all over again. Doing it wasn't easy, yet it had to be done. I needed to get my life back somehow, and that means having a new routine without thinking about betrayal every waking moment of the day. This is where work became my biggest outlet. I was more than willing to give my best in the new position that I was given in the course of the promotion that I had been longing to get. The work late at night, difficult projects, and of course the companionship with my team members helped distract my mind. It was also pleasant to be encouraged and to notice the results of my work. As time went on, My relationship with Laura also improved. We grew closer, spending as much time together as possible, both of us healing from our betrayals. The sting was no longer the only thing that connected us. We began to relish in each other's company. They went out for hikes, tried out new restaurants, and even went on a weekend trip to the coast. She was always so real, and I felt like it was always meant to be, like we found each other after the storm. On one fateful evening, Laura invited me over for dinner. Our children were with the grandparents, who left us home alone. She prepared an incredibly delicious meal, and after that, we just talked and laughed for a long time. By the evening, we are both on the couch holding each other's hands. After a pause, she turned to me and looked squarely into my face with big, storytelling eyes. "Mark," she whispered, "I know we have not enjoyed the best of times, but you must understand that you have brought so much joy into my life." I put my hand on her hand and smiled at her. I could see the love in her eyes. "I have the same feeling, Laura. You are my pillar throughout all this. I've been lost without you." We kissed, and it was as if we were falling into each other's arms and life seemed perfect. It was a new start, a fresh start for the both of us, something that could be made out of the ashes of our past. However, it was not always smooth sailing. Jenna tried to communicate occasionally, and she sent me emails a couple of times as well as came to my workplace once. It was obvious that she had issues, but I could not let her back into my life again. I needed to guard what made me happy now more than ever. Then one day I got a message from her parents. They wanted to convene and talk about Jenna. I agreed to do it out of respect for them. I first saw them at a local coffee shop and they seemed somewhat tired and concerned. "Mark," Mr. Thompson said, "sorry for all that Jenna did to you. We are sorry, but she is our daughter, and we are concerned about her." I did not respond verbally, but gently shook my head in affirmation as I comprehended the anguish they were going through. "I understand, but I have to move on now. I can't go back to her. She betrayed my trust beyond repair." Mrs. Thompson wiped the tear that had come out unexpectedly. "We are not asking you to take her back. All you need to know is that she has a therapist and is gradually making improvements to her life." It was both a relieving and saddening experience. I wish she could be happy now, but I have no other choice but to start a new life. We said thank you for sparing time and we left on good terms. And for me, it was a necessary closure, or perhaps the final release from everything that had happened. While we were preparing ourselves for the future, Laura and I kept working on our future together. So, we agreed not to get too involved until we see that it is the best thing to do for both of us. But as time passed, one realized that they were destined for each other. She and her children were featured in my life, and I was keen on the coming days with them. Once one weekend, we thought it would be fun to take the children to an amusement park nearby. Bright lights were beaming, and people laughing and having lots of fun. To see that Laura's kids are happy, and to see her happily watching them play, made my heart grow big. I understood that with them, I have found another family, who accepts and loves me for who I am. To my surprise, we sat down on the porch that evening, while Laura was putting the children to bed. She rested her head on my shoulder and closed her eyes, smiling in bliss. "Mark, I do not know what would have become of me if I did not find a friend and companion like you," she whispered. "You have created so much joy for me." I kissed her forehead. "And you've done the same for me, Laura. I never thought I'd find love again, but here we are." We sat there, cuddled up, aware that the worst was well and truly over. We have been to hell and back, but finally, we have something in common. We are in love. With each passing month, our friendship only seemed to deepen. We spoke for hours about the future and how we can merge our lives still further. For me, it was quite scary, but also thrilling, I must say. Of course, it was clear that there would be some difficulties, but I was quite prepared to encounter them with Laura. For anyone who is currently experiencing betrayal, it is crucial to understand that is not the end of the tunnel. Yes, it is a very difficult path, but one can start to get back to a normal and happy life once more. Stay with nice people, look after yourself, and never be scared to be romantic. But the relationship between Laura and me continued to develop further. At times it was not convenient, but every experience that was faced as a team made us become the best. We began to discuss the future and how we would fully integrate the two families into a single one. One day, I visited her to spend dinner time together. Children were running around in the living room, and we were only the two sitting at the table. One day, I went to her house to have dinner with her. The children were running around in the living room, and only the two of us were sitting at the table. We discussed dreams, fears, and all kinds of different stories, and then all of a sudden, Laura turned to face me and then she scowled at me. "Mark, I have a question to ask you," she softly said, and I could hear that she was shaking. "Can you envision a future with us? I'm not talking about some dreamy, wishy-washy kind of future." I crossed the table to get her and grasped her hand. "Laura, I have never been so sure about anything before in my life. I love you and your kids. I want to be with you and create the future together." Her eyes welled up with tears while she smiled. "I love you too, Mark, more than I ever imagined." It was at this point that we chose to go for the next level. So I decided to marry her, and I took her and the kids to live together as the new family that we have become. We had our ups and downs. There were changes and development. But we overcame these challenges side by side. They both began to consider me as a father, and that brought about an overwhelming happiness that I never knew existed. On the other hand, Jenna slowly tried to make contact from time to time. She continued sending several other emails to me, but never got a reply from me. I knew she wanted to apologize for what she did to me, but I could not go back to being with her. I had to stay safe in this new life and with my new people. Well, one day I ceased receiving emails from her and I assumed she was following suit and letting go as well. One day I got a message from her parents. They said Jenna was better and had found a new job to work for as a nurse. That was a clear indication that she was picking up the pieces in her life and trying to fix things. No matter how she treated me, I had no ill feelings toward her and still do not at this moment. All I needed was to forget what had happened and just be happy. Laura and I agreed to have a simple reception with only our beloved friends and relatives to welcome the start of the new chapter in our lives. People were invited who had stood with us through thick and thin. This, my friends, was an evening full of joy, affection, and optimism. When we clinked our glasses for the future, I was struck by how far I had come. It was during the celebration when Laura's sister had to corner me. "Mark, I just want to say thank you," she said. "You have brought joy to my sister, and I can see that she has been smiling again." I smiled, for I had a feeling of accomplishment. "Thank you very much. With Laura and the children, I have a reason to live again, and I'm thankful for that." Little did I know that throughout the night I would be reflecting on the events of the day. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. This was what led me to this place. I came to understand that sometimes one is led through the valley so that they can recognize the mountaintop whenever they get there. I had a simple wedding ceremony and only a few friends and relatives were in attendance. It was not about the size and the pomp. It was about the feeling that we had for one another. Standing there with her hands in mine and gazing into her eyes, I realized that the place I was in was going to be my home forever. It was not always easy to grow up in such a family, but at the same time, it was incredibly valuable and happy, and we rose and fell as one, always discussing, always encouraging one another. Step by step, I became not only a stepfather to Laura's children, but also a father in the best sense of the word.